Lane Kiffin is headed to LSU, but trying to take the new gig and also still coach Ole Miss? Truly absurd. And so were the attempts to sway public opinion. I'm Doug Kezirian. This is Hard Pass, also available in podcast. Congratulations, a round of applause is in order. We all made it. Our national nightmare is over, for the most part. College football's Panda Watch has thankfully come to an end. All that was missing over a few-week stretch, particularly the final few days, was Ron Burgundy and Veronica Corningstone tossing live in the field with Brian Fontana. However, we did get ESPN's Marty Smith camped out in Oxford, Mississippi into the wee hours of Saturday night. And because of that, we got a hilarious Marty Smith meme from Barstool mocking the entire circus. God bless the internet. As expected, Lane Kiffin is headed to LSU, taking over a premier program and becoming one of the sport's highest paid coaches ever. $12 million annually over 7 years, plus incentives that pushes it over $100 million deal. But the real story is the timing, as in the leaving or abandoning, depending on your stance, a top 10 team that's about to enter the playoff and compete for a national championship. After guiding the Rebels to the best season in school history, Kiffin was booed by Ole Miss fans as he, his family, and many assistants boarded 2 private planes in Oxford Airport. But after landing in Baton Rouge, the polar opposite reaction. But the real story is how everything unfolded publicly, trying, and I emphasize trying, to control the optics by using media to influence public perception so Kiffin could have his cake and eat it too. The degree and depth this went at times felt icky. But then again, I don't blame him. This is big game hunting. You know, we often criticize this new culture of everyone gets a trophy and kumbaya. So I'm definitely okay with things getting uncomfortable, right? The stakes are high. It's all part of the negotiation process. And Kiffin went for everything and even trying to play victim a bit with his public tweet announcing the move to Baton Rouge. Make no mistake, college football is a dumb calendar where the timing of the transfer portal for current players, national signing day for high schoolers, and playoffs all overlap. Simply a stretch of time that's absolutely critical for coaches to hit the road and get their ducks in a row for next year, coinciding with the home stretch of this season.
This is not a Lane Kiffin conundrum. This is a college football conundrum.
Clearly, the current system is truly idiotic. With that being said, Kiffin wanted it all, which I think is totally ridiculous. In fact, ironically, LSU found itself in a similar situation just on the other side of things back in 2007 when their coach, Les Miles, was expected and even reported to be leaving the Tigers to go coach his beloved alma mater, Michigan. But LSU and Miles had qualified for the BCS title game, so they weren't passing up a chance to compete for a championship, and thus the Wolverines turned to Rich Rod for their next coaching gig. Now, there were other factors involved in the search, but you know what Les Miles did not do? He did not ask to coach LSU for the next few weeks while having one foot out the door for Ann Arbor. It doesn't work like that. Kiffin, though, thought he should get to coach Ole Miss in the playoff, even though he's already announced he's going to be the head coach of a rival within the SEC. 2 main reasons this is absurd. First, and it's not getting mentioned enough, everyone is assuming Kiffin coaching the Rebels would be a good thing for Ole Miss. We're all assuming that he could game plan for opponents, poring over film, implementing strategy, running practices, everything else that comes with a super demanding job, and also do everything that's necessary for his new LSU position that's also extremely demanding during that recruiting process. It's absurd and just not happening. Want to know why I definitely know that? Because he's already demonstrated he cannot do it, and he was only a coordinator at the time. During the 2016 postseason, Kiffin was Alabama's offensive coordinator and announced in December he would become the Florida Atlantic head coach once Bama's postseason had ended, okay? However, after one playoff win, Saban said, "Pack your bags." Kiffin, in his eyes, wasn't completely focused on the job at hand, and Saban didn't want to jeopardize the Tide's chances to win it all. In this LSU Ole Miss example, Kiffin or any other human on this planet would be a shell of himself. Because if he's not, then you're implying every other playoff coach has a light schedule during the playoffs. Kiffin's still only getting 24 hours in one day. It's simple math. One person cannot do two super busy jobs at that same performance level. Now, the second part of this is how it all seemed to be orchestrated, one giant spin zone. At times, it felt like we were being conned or manipulated, and it just didn't sit right. It's one thing to think Kiffin has a really tough decision to make. I get that. It's another to think Ole Miss should just allow it. It's like a guy who's about to get married, and in the few weeks before the wedding, he's also trying to have one last hurrah with an ex, and even goes traveling with her, all while helping to plan the wedding remotely with his soon-to-be wife. So not only would Kiffin not be a great coach for Ole Miss's playoff run because he's human, but he wouldn't be a great coach for LSU's recruiting either. But it seemingly felt like all his media cronies, all represented by the same talent agency, were trying to get ahead of things and lead the naive public horse to water.
I think you need to set your emotions to the side. You need to look at 2025 and this team with their coach and giving them a chance to finish this run, whoever that might be. That's the tricky part here. I think there's no doubt if you talk to the players, some of them have come out publicly and said, we want our coach to coach us to the end.
While at ESPN, I only met Kirk Herbstreit a few times, and he was nothing but awesome, okay? Maybe he genuinely believes that Kiffin could do both jobs and didn't necessarily think all of this through, but I couldn't disagree more. And then also the FAU example. Now, keep in mind, Herbstreit's a guy who ESPN has allowed to call Thursday Night Football for Amazon, and he's very good at both, so he genuinely thought Kiffin could pull it off and that Ole Miss maybe allow it because ESPN allows him to work momentarily for Amazon during the football season one night a week. But no way that could happen here. And Kiffin touched on this with ESPN's Marty Smith when sharing a convo with Ole Miss athletic director Keith Carter, who actually didn't even let Kiffin attend a players meeting after the announcement, let alone coach them throughout the postseason.
He asked me not to come to the meeting and said I couldn't come, but which I totally understand. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. We're trying to find a way, to make this work and coach the team and give the team the best chance to win. But I also, he's got a job to do, and like he said, he has to live here. So, like he said, maybe all the national people understand why he should let me coach, but he has to live here, and it's a little different when you're the AD.
Ole Miss was not having any of it. No one last hurrah before Kiffin marries LSU. Keith Carter drew a line in the sand and seemed to resent Kiffin for abandoning the team when announcing that defensive coordinator Pete Golding would take over as head coach.
But when it came right down to it, we have someone that is a leader of men that can lead you guys. And that man is Pete Golding. Pete Golding.
Ole Miss handled this the proper way. They matched LSU's contractual offer. That's key, the money, right? But LSU offered too many bells and whistles and a better chance to win a national championship. Marty Smith also did the right thing by asking Kiffin why he was leaving. But the 50-year-old coach, who's openly discussed his sobriety over the last handful of years and maturation process, said the right things. No need to put down Ole Miss in this sort of soundbite. He articulated how leaving Ole Miss after 6 years was much different than leaving Tennessee for USC earlier in his career, i.e. when he was less mature.
This was really hard. My heart was here, but I just, I talked to some mentors, Coach Carroll, Coach Saban, especially when Coach Carroll said, man, your dad would tell you to go, man, take the shot. Take the shot. You've accomplished a lot here. I always hated how we only gave 1 year to Tennessee and left. I really hated that feeling of that, even though it was an exciting year. But, I think that we gave a lot to this program and to the city and, some of those historic wins in this stadium.
Some people will look at this and say, okay, it is the best season in the history of the school, the best era in the history of the program, a playoff team with an opportunity to win a national championship. So what does LSU offer in your mind that Ole Miss doesn't?
I don't know all that. It just was something that I prayed on and made a family decision. And maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. But I think a lot of times, you just go prove things right. And that's what we're going to do when we get there.
Kiffin is going after it, even though he once tweeted about the grass not always being greener on the other side, which is hilarious and ironic. Now, it was almost 5 years ago, but he did retweet a quote from Denzel Washington. Beware of destination addiction, the idea that happiness is in the next place, the next job, or even with the next partner. Until you give up the idea that happiness is somewhere else, It will never be wherever you are. And that's going back to college, right? Got to go to this party, got to go to this bar and things like that. It's FOMO, right? The truth is LSU has superior facilities, also Death Valley, better recruiting base. It's in the big leagues, even though Ole Miss is also in the SEC. It's like playing for the Yankees instead of the Tampa Bay Rays. He feels he owes it to him to go see what's behind that door. And no one can fault him for that. Just go do it and don't play victim or try to have your cake and eat it too, or even try to tell us how to feel about it. Time now for Fans in the Stands, and this is when we respond to some comments from a recent episode, our audience or our fans in the stands. Also time to remind you to please go like and subscribe to the show. Really helps us with the analytics. That is the currency in this YouTube world, and it's free for you to go do that. So please help us out if you don't mind. But most recent episode is about the playoff committee in college football and why they are ranking Notre Dame ahead of Miami. And I tried to explain it. It's consistent with years past, but people want to say, no, it's about the Notre Dame brand and because of the head-to-head. It's not. And here's some recent comments. RG Advice says, the fact that you are using the term style points shows the human element needs to be removed. It's a popularity contest. Here are the CFP committee criteria: Blue Bloods, SEC, Big Ten, everyone else. Notre Dame is a blue blood. Miami is in the everybody else category. The whole system is a farce. Is it possible that Miami refuses to go to a bowl game as a protest? They won't. They just won't. In terms of the farce and things like that, I get it. The Irish, maybe there's some confirmation bias, but it's not. There has to be the eye test. And I said in the video, the first year of the playoff, Florida State was the defending national champion, okay? Had the reigning Heisman Trophy winner in Jameis. And they were the only undefeated team, and they still had him seeded third going into the playoff because of the way those games were unfolding. Yes, they were winning, but they were not clean. They were trailing at halftime in a bunch. I like that. It's a painfully inefficient sport. You can't just say 12 games, these records, everything's equal. It's not the case, right? Certain wins, certain losses matter more. So 10-2 does not always equal 10-2, okay? TS Solutions Pro says, is it hard for you to explain with any logical reason because it is not based on facts or statistics, but based on the whims of a bunch of old retired men that are not playing the games? Wins always matter more than losses. Should we just negate all wins and only look at losses, or better yet, negate all wins by any underdog in history because they were not worthy of finding a way to win? The reality is the committee uses their logic to support their biased, flawed viewpoints. That's the confirmation bias thing. Look, when you factor in and prioritize losses, you're also prioritizing wins, right? Because when every game has a team that lost, they also have one that won. I get it. It's annoying and things like that. But just think of it this way. 10-2 does not always equal 10-2, okay? Who you beat and who you lose do matter. So in this case, Notre Dame's like 10-1.4 because of the losses, who they were. A&M by that 1 point, the holding call and all that, and then the 3-point loss at Miami. Now, Miami's 10-2 is like 10-2.7 because they lost to two 4-loss teams, one of those at home. Think of it like that, okay? I know it's beauty contests and things like that, but it's just not 10-2 equals 10-2 because the gap between those two is not enough to outweigh a 3-point home win, okay? The head-to-head. That's why it's not just 10-2 and 10-2. Big Killa says, while Miami says the Irish don't play hard schedule, they don't bother to take a look at their schedule when they play an FCS school, and the hardest other team they play besides Pitt is USF. Miami fans cry some more. And yeah, that's the thing. It's not like they had this bunch of wins against top 10 teams, sort of like offsetting those two losses. Mike Argyle says, everyone talks about BYU's blowout loss to Texas Tech. So if BYU loses by 1 score against Tech in the rematch, they shouldn't be in because they shouldn't be punished for playing an extra game at the same time proving they can hang with Tech. I'm okay with all of that. Look, BYU lost at Lubbock, okay, on a neutral field, and they got blown out. On a neutral field, if it's a tight game, I would have no problem with BYU moving up, because if you don't move up teams and you don't stay fluid, then you're having the actual chronological order of the games matter way too much. If a team has a big win at the end of the season, beats like the #1 team in the country, they should be able to go up. So in this case, if BYU loses at the gun to Texas Tech, one of the better teams in the country, they should benefit from that and not let the calendar dictate the pecking order, which would be idiotic. So I like the human element in this committee. It's just that sometimes people have an issue with the criteria and which criteria is prioritized over like a head-to-head 3-point home win result. All right, that's going to do it for this edition. A lot of college football storylines and news this week. Join the conversation, weigh in. Please let us know your thoughts. We really appreciate it. Maybe we'll signal it out some on the next episode.